Now that Colorado has legalized marijuana for recreational use, it turns out that more and more babies are allegedly being born with THC in their system. Now, I want to give you a huge warning before we continue on with this story. Apparently, there is a Pueblo hospital that is reporting nearly half the babies tested in 1 month had marijuana in their system. Now, this particular hospital, though, is fighting to get rid of recreational pot in their area. Right?
I don't believe them.
So I don't believe them. I'm just going to put that out there, okay? But the reason why I brought this story up is because it brings up a larger discussion about A, why are people drug testing babies, okay? Mm-hmm. I feel like it's immediately assuming that these mothers are like druggies and like, we got to drug test the babies to make sure they're not druggies, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's something weird about it. And then also, should a woman lose her child to Child Protective Services if the baby has THC in his or her system? I think it's an interesting conversation. And keep in mind that there haven't been very many, or I don't even know if there have been any studies into the impact of THC on a fetus, because researchers are very reluctant to do those types of studies on pregnant women.
Well, also, you can't do any studies on THC because the government has it as a,
Schedule 1 substance.
Schedule 1 substance, right? So, all right, to me, a couple of things out of this story. If the Pueblo hospital, which has apparently got an axe to grind here, was right, and half of the babies being born had THC in their system, that means that the American people love pot. I mean, think about that. If half the mothers were on anything when they came in, that would tell you, boy, that is incredibly common. So what, you're going to make illegal something that half of your community is taking, even when they're pregnant, you're going to make that illegal and you think that's going to work. So I think that even the propaganda they're putting out is counterproductive to their own cause. Secondly, I'm not saying that THC is wonderful for babies. I have no idea. We've never studied it, and I could see how that could be problematic.
Right.
I just don't know. I believe in this crazy thing called science, and we should figure it out. But remember that for as long as anyone could remember, women were drinking during their pregnancy. They were smoking during their pregnancy. And so we didn't lock up every woman in the country when almost everyone smoked or drank during their pregnancy. Now, that doesn't mean it was the right thing to do, and I'm glad that we had education around that and realized, hey, it can cause some problems. And I'm not saying there wasn't any problems for that entire generation, okay? So remember, there used to be tremendous crime rates. Those have come down now. And a lot of questions as to why. Maybe a little bit better, taking care of our fetus a little bit better might have been part of the reason. I don't know. So yes, education is super, super important. Let's study it. Let's find out what the reality is. Don't trust some random hospital with, there's no way the guy running that hospital isn't deeply conservative and didn't have some, well, Anna already told you what he or she thinks and why they went in this direction. But overall, don't panic. But until we have the studies, I'd also be a little careful about smoking pot when you're pregnant.
Yeah, look, I'm not an advocate of smoking pot while you're pregnant. I think it's a really bad idea, especially because the science is still out. We have no idea what kind of impact it's going to have on your baby. So I think you should just be cautious and avoid doing that altogether. With that said, though, I think this raises a really big problem that you're seeing in many red states in the U.S., okay? So Colorado, as far as I know, doesn't have this type of law, but there are states like Mississippi, for instance, that have things like fetal harm laws. And what they do is they'll drug test the baby, or they'll drug test the fetus, whatever it is, to figure out, or drug test the mother, I should say, to figure out whether or not she has any drug in her system. And then they'll also look through her records to see if she's ever had any substance abuse issues in the past. And if her baby is born with any type of issue, even if it's not related to the drugs that she took months ago, years ago, whatever it is, they'll go ahead and prosecute her for murder. And so that's a really big problem in the country. And so I get very weary of these stories where they're like, oh my God, these babies are born with THC in their system, right? Because I think it starts to inch closer to criminalizing women who might have substance abuse issues. And remember, if a woman has a substance abuse issue, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's a bad person. It definitely means that she needs help. And if you have that kind of legislation out there, if you have those kinds of laws out there, it's going to deter them from seeking help if they're pregnant.
Yeah, and that's a bad idea for everybody. Just let's try to get people the help they need, the babies, the moms, instead of always going on the warpath.
Yeah.
Like the answer is, everything looks like a nail if all you have is a hammer. And these people are out there like, where's the THC? Just calm down for a second. Let's figure out what's going on.